You gotta go and get to win and not conquer. I had to go out and get it without a sponsor. Kept it real, never crooked, yeah, that's honor. Now I can go out and get it how I want to. Hashtag bless, I choose.
What is up, Rumble? What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Ryan Matta Show. Thank you guys for joining us on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday morning, depending on where you're at around the United States. If you guys could do us a huge solid, smash that like button, share this content, let everybody know we live you, especially over on Rumble. If you just swing down there and make sure that that thumbs up button turns green, it'll help push this out to the algorithm and let them know that you're enjoying this content. I want to introduce a special guest. It's Rebel Mining in Texas. His name is David. BRANSCUM, and I'm going to have him on. We're going to be doing an interview. We're going to be talking about all things Bitcoin mining, the Bitcoin adoption. I'm going to get into and hear his story right off the bat. So I won't over talk it. David, my man, welcome to the show, buddy. It's an honor to have you.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. So tell us a little bit about your story, where you're from, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so I came into the Bitcoin mining space almost accidentally, got kind of dragged into it, just thought I was getting another job in tech, building data centers with a company that was producing immersion cooling. So we can go into the details on that a little bit later, but and then left that company, was an immersion cooling mining consultant, built a couple of air-cooled Bitcoin mines, couple immersion cooled, got to learn about off-grid gas mining, going straight to the source, Bitcoin mining directly at the source, owning the power generation, being a little more sovereign and vertical. And now I'm working with a company, Via Energy, where we're focusing specifically on off-grid site mining, and then also alternative energy fuel sources, waste to energy, things of that nature. So just kind of, I like working on cool stuff, heat recapture, reusing the energy, making Bitcoin mining not your primary focus, but a secondary focus, also providing additional goods and services on top of that. So that's kind of my focus. I just started out on one end and I'm slowly moving upstream to where the power generation is. And that's where I feel my focus is going to be moving forward.
Man, I have so many questions already. Holy cow. That sounds like such an interesting story. Start me from the beginning. What year did you say you got into it?
This was late 2020, early 21, somewhere around there.
Early 2020. And what was walk me through the process of like first getting in. You said data center and you thought you're going to build something, and then you kind of got into immersion cooling mining, if I'm saying that right? Submersion?
Yeah, well, I mean, immersion is what brought me in. So I was 2020, late 2020, early 21, and I was like a lot of people, I found myself, not really doing anything productive, kind of a lot of time at home, things like that. And I got super bored and was like, honestly, just kind of running out of focus, running through savings. And I was like, I need to do something. I need to learn something. I was stuck in a rut and tired of what, life was doing to me and my family, especially my boys, things like that. And so I got 2 boys at home. And so I went to Home Depot or Lowe's, I guess, and bought like probably a couple $1,000s worth of stuff that I didn't need to spend money on, and started building a raised grow bed in my backyard. I had a koi pond, and I was deciding, I'd been kind of going down that rabbit hole on YouTube, decided I was going to build a raised grow bed, built it. My neighbor across the street came over and was like, what are you doing? So I told him. He's like, oh, you got a kit or something? I'm like, no, I'm building it. I did the research. I did the math. I'm not an engineer, but, I figured out flow rates, Bell siphons for flood and drain systems, Venturi effects, started including all this stuff and optimizing this grow bed. And he said, what do you know about, thermodynamics? I'm like, nothing. He said, what do you know about Bitcoin? I was like, very little. He said, what do you know about immersion cooling? I was like, even less than I know about Bitcoin mining. And so he said, well, I need somebody to do some business development. We started talking, and I ended up going to work for him. It was the company that provided Riot, the publicly traded miner, a couple 100 megawatts worth of immersion cooling. And so we were doing that job, but they wanted me to focus on traditional data centers. But I could see very quickly that, Bitcoin mining was going to be the industry that really adopted and took this technology and ran with it. They were already doing it. And traditional data centers is it's a beast of an industry. It's really well established. It's going to take a while for that ship to turn, right? They're getting there, but it's slow. And so I left and helped build a couple of Bitcoin mines, got some paid education. I'd never actually built those before. I'd been working at Dell before, so I kind of knew what a data center was, but this was a whole new ballgame. And some nice gentlemen hired me to help plan and build a 16 megawatt facility. I think it ended up being half air, half immersion. And then I got to work with another friend on building a Bitcoin mine off grid using just gas powered generators. So that was an education for me as well. And I just realized after going down that rabbit hole, learning how to, build that raised grow bed, my rut was I just needed to learn stuff. I just needed to learn new things and kind of reinvent myself a little bit. And it's this industry has really embraced me. I feel very blessed and lucky to have been thrown into it. I didn't search it out, but I've been very, happy to just continue to learn. Every stone you turn over in this industry is something new to learn. And so people that love to learn new things, math, science, physics, electrical engineering, thermodynamics, energy, you can study all of it, and it's all connected through Bitcoin, which is, I think, what makes it such an interesting cultural phenomenon.
So when you said 16 megawatt facility, did I hear that correct?
Yeah.
Put that into terms, layman terms, for the normal people that don't understand. How big of a facility is that?
1 megawatt can power about 50,000 homes. So that kind of gives you, my numbers maybe it's 35,000, depends on, what you're pulling there. But I think that's about accurate. So the largest Bitcoin mining facility that I know of is in Rockdale, Texas, just north of us. And that's the Riot Windstone facility. It's 700 megawatts. 500 megawatts, and they're opening another one in Corsicana that's going to be 700. We're talking about over a gigawatt, which is a gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts. So this is what the proof of work system in Bitcoin is actually built on. You actually, there's a narrative out there that it's bad for the environment or it's bad for power and that sort of thing, but it's not true. Bitcoin miners take all the energy that's usually wasted and turn it into something valuable. They give it a reason to exist, as opposed to what would usually just be lost through heat and transmission. We would just lose that power.
Can you break that down for people? Why are we losing that power? Why are we not able to harness and hold on to it?
Yeah, so it comes down to physics. Anytime you move power energy from one location to another, right, you lose energy. So if you break it all down all the way to you get up in the morning and you throw your feet out of bed and you want to walk into the kitchen to get yourself coffee, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to use some energy literally thinking while you're moving, right? It's not a great analogy, but you're going to use a little bit, your brain's going to use a little bit of energy. So not all of that energy is used just in that movement, right? Mm-hmm. The same way that you're converting the energy from one location to another, you can lose as much as 30-40% of that energy during transmission. On a power line, on a high voltage power line, right?
The longer the distance, the more you lose, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And so, and then also when you move it from one voltage to another. So if you're stepping it down from like high voltage 138 kV down to like 415, 480 volt, 480, 415 volt, every step down, you lose, 10 to 15% of that energy. If you go from alternating current to direct current, AC to DC, you lose efficiency, things like that. And so Bitcoin miners are finding an interesting way to fit in those weird holes and gaps and actually increase the efficiency of energy on any grid, all three of the grids in the US, but especially here in Texas. It's very valuable here in Texas.
And am I understanding this right? Because if, like, say a Bitcoin miner or a farm goes in to like a local town or in any really area where there's a grid, in Texas, a lot of the houses during the day are producing massive loads of electricity. Everybody's running their AC units. There's this massive demand for electricity. At night, there's no demand, and it's actually more cost inefficient for them to produce extra to support the workload during the day. And at night, when all the homes are off, that's kind of wasted electricity. Now the Bitcoin miners are able to consume that and help stabilize these grids.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, even before the Bitcoin miners were around, right? When you would build a facility, let's say they're building a bunch of homes outside of town and you're building a substation to handle the electricity delivery to those homes. Normally they would say, okay, these homes are going to need 10 megawatts of power. We're going to build this for 15, 20, 25 megawatts because of, future growth, right? If we're going to spend this money and this time to build this, we're going to prepare. Well, they'll do that, and then they'll need the electricity for that site. Well, if everybody all of a sudden there's it's like the winter storm, what was it, Uri or whatever that happened in 2020, 21, whenever that was. It was a similar situation where all of a sudden everybody needed every last bit of heat, electric, everything. People were plugging in space heaters, all that kind of stuff. And we needed 100% of the production. We actually needed 105% of the production because we had some production go down, right? So during times of peak stress, they would always build it, and then you never know when it's going to happen. So unfortunately, you just always produce that energy. Well, if you produce that energy and you don't use it, that's that loss that I'm talking about, right? Or you have to shut down. Well, then you shut down, and then it costs you more money and time to turn back on should you need it. So they have peaker plants and things like that have done that, and they would pay them a ridiculous amount of money to get to turn back on during times of peak stress. Now they can just produce 100% of the power. Bitcoin miners will take, let's say they're using 80%, Bitcoin miners will take that 20% load. So if it's a 20 megawatt facility, Bitcoin miners or substation, Bitcoin miners will come in and say, I'll take that 4 megawatts. You're like, okay, great. So they're taking that 4 megawatts, the 16's running the houses. Then in times of peak stress during the hot summer months or cold winter months, Bitcoin miners will literally just turn down. And will if you hedge it right, sometimes you're just doing it to avoid cost and the expensive cost of what the power would cost you on the free market in Texas. But if you hedge it right, you can basically sell those credits you purchased back to the market and drop your overall levelized cost, or LCOE, levelized cost of energy. And so that's what the narrative comes from. He's like, these Bitcoin miners are only paying like 1.5, 2 cents some months to mine Bitcoin. Well, yeah, but we're buying power ahead at like 3, 4, 5 cents per kilowatt hour, right? And we're also using 4 megawatts of power at any given time, 100% of the time when it's not needed by anyone else. But the second it's needed by someone else, we flip the switch and turn off and give it all back to, in fact, we're actually reducing the overall cost to the end user, the resident, or the commercial business that's down the line. So
you had said quite a few things there. So walk me through that. Your next job after you finished the first one, you went on to your second. Kind of walk us through that part of that.
So I was let's see, immersion cooling consultant. Did that for a little while. Really about 9 months or so, and then took a job as chief commercial officer for a couple companies. They were basically same ownership, right? Just 2 different companies, 2 different hats. One was negotiating contracts and agreements for hosting miners. We would find sites, develop, 10, 20 megawatt sites, and then they would pay us to manage their operations. And then the other side was energy sourcing. So I would go find a on-grid asset, whether it's a interconnect or a substation. I would find out what excess capacity was available. I would get that locked in, and then we'd purchase or lease property like right next door to it as close as we could to save on infrastructure costs. And then we would develop and sell those sites to other companies, basically Bitcoin miners that wanted to come in and do that. And a few months ago, the Energy Information Association, the EIA, in Washington sent out a survey to 82 Bitcoin miners, and everybody got a letter that said, "Tell us who you are, where you're located. I want GPS. I want to know what you're mining, how much power you're using, how often you're mining, like just all of the detail, who's your partners, all of the details of that." And few miners in Texas, a few miners across the country, and then Texas Blockchain Summit, which I'm a member here. Lee Bratcher did a great job of helping to coordinate that. Dennis Porter, Satoshi Action Fund, shout out to those guys. And then Riot Winstone, or Jason Less over at Riot kind of led the charge, and a few others, big pubcos, but they filed a lawsuit to get that thrown out, and eventually they backed down. But this is something that I've seen coming for a long time. It's only a matter before, the the government comes with regulation. They want their taxes. They need their pound of flesh, right? Or they actually need, they want to own it all, right? So it's only a matter of time. So this was not a surprise to me. I just didn't know how it was going to happen. But all this did was fuel my desire to be off grid, behind the meter, working either directly with an energy producer or just being completely off grid, right? Like, so, I mean, the only thing I needed was like a satellite internet connection and access to gas well or a coal source or hydroelectric, whatever it was, just somewhere out there, fully vertical, a little more sovereign. I think eventually they will still come, but that's the furthest point, especially here in the US. And as long as there's energy here and there's plenty of it and there's not enough people to use it, we're going to keep pushing and utilizing that energy that's, would otherwise just be wasted or just sit there and not do anything. We're turning it into a value. And so my latest company, Vea Energy, that's what we're focused on, is off-grid mining, getting access to these sites that are, some of them were even built, anticipating being able to sell their power to the market, and they can't. It's stranded, whether it's geographically or economically, and we're using it to help build the future, global financial backbone by helping to increase the hash rate on this global network. So.
And everything that David is talking about, links to all of his companies are everything down in the description. So if you guys are hearing something you guys like and you guys want to learn more, please swing down there. And don't forget to swing over and follow him on X as well. This information is absolutely amazing. When you say go off grid, can you break that down a little bit for me? I assume that you're meaning you're actually going to buy or purchase your own power station and then just pull that energy yourself and then use that energy that you're pulling out of the ground to supply your own miners, so you're not going through some company that the government can come and kind of middleman between?
Sure. It's it's your standard, capitalistic society, right? It's economics. Everybody that touches a product between, its production and the end user, right, they get paid for that service, whatever that is, right? So if I want to eliminate that, I want to either own or be as close to the power source as possible. And to be honest, there has never really been a technological solution that can take advantage of that situation until Bitcoin. Traditional data centers, especially the newer AI and things like that, are mission critical, meaning if there's any downtime at all, someone somewhere loses money, right? There are consequences. If it's a hospital, it's dire consequences if they lose energy, right? So this is and these traditional data centers can't be as far out as some of this energy because there's no fiber, there's no data. And, Starlink is good, but it's not like, a giant fiber line yet as far as connectivity goes. So this is the first technology that's been able to literally just go out there and take advantage of this energy in a way that no one's been able to do before. We can go out in the middle of a field in the middle of, nowhere in West Texas. We can take the flare gas that normally would just be burned because methane's bad for the environment. So they say flare it. And then, that reduces about 98% of the methane, turns it into carbon. We can take that flare gas, put it through a generator, and you're essentially flaring it, eliminating a lot of that methane, but you're turning it into electricity when you do that. And then that gives you the ability to do work, right? So what's the work? Well, up till now, you haven't really been able to do much. I mean, a guy can power his house, or he could, set up random charging stations, but, in these areas where they're at, nobody's going to drive their, electric vehicle. Nobody's going to bring their Tesla over to this spot just to charge, right? So this has given us the ability to take advantage of this. Bitcoin miners can do this. And we needed a little bit of an internet connection, but it doesn't have to be, crazy. We're just doing one compute process after another, over and over, thousands and thousands of times a second, millions of times a second, supporting the network. And as each transaction is created and each block is created, so those blocks are put together, we're actually able to support like I said, I'll repeat it over and over again because I believe it. The future backbone of the financial network is the layer 0 or layer 1, if you want to call it that, Bitcoin network. We're able to support it from areas where technology has never been. Gridless is doing some amazing things in Africa. Basically creating these microgrids in areas that have a little bit of hydroelectric. I mean, tiny amounts of hydroelectric, but they're able to take advantage of that little bit of power, harness it, turn it into money almost immediately, and then utilize that money to build infrastructure and supply electricity, plumbing, things like that to communities that have never had running water, never had electricity, and are just so below what you would consider to be the global poverty level, right? Bitcoin miners are able to do all of this in a way that no technology's been able to before. And so it's not going to stop. It'll just move to wherever it's needed.
Do you see the way that our country's headed? You talked about that lawsuit a little bit. I think everybody that's watching this is at a point, almost to the breaking point, I think, in our country of putting up with this tyrannical government. I would assume that you don't feel like that these government regulations or anything they're trying to do are actually trying to help the Bitcoin industry or push it forward in any positive direction. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, I've been in it not a long time, but like the hardcore Bitcoiners that have been in it for years, right? It's funny. It's like for a long time, they were like, yeah, Bitcoin, 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 Bitcoin. You need to use it. You need to have it. You need to use it. It's, fix the money, fix the world, which is all good. And then, I think that the ETF is kind of the government putting their stamp of approval on it a little bit. They're like, the people want this, BlackRock wants it, and so it's like
Daddy
the money
wants, Daddy gets.
Yeah, what Daddy wants, Daddy gets, right? So it's like this is kind of their stamp of approval, but at the same time, I feel like they're wanting to do this because it also gives them a little bit of visibility. It gives them control. We have a saying in Bitcoin, let me go back. And those old school Bitcoiners now are like, oh, not your keys, not your coins. You don't need to buy an ETF fund. You need to have your own, Bitcoin and gold storage. You need to take control of your money and stuff like that. And that's great. But I think the future is both. I think the future is both. If you are smart enough to take control of your Bitcoin, that's great. Some people don't want the responsibility. That's why we have banks. If they don't want to have, hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash stuffed in a mattress in their house. So there's reasons for all of these. I think that it's kind of a double-edged sword. You're going to have to give up a little bit of visibility in order to get, what I consider hyper Bitcoinization, where we're actually using Bitcoin globally in ways that, allow you to use it as collateral for debt or to transact with it or, to exchange it for goods and services anywhere, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You're kind of going to need a little bit of both. El Salvador is kind of leading the way with, making it a national currency. They've got it on their balance sheet. My goal with VEA is also to eventually help, municipalities in the U.S., right? Municipalities, companies in the U.S. mine Bitcoin, just like, taking a page out of Michael Saylor's book at MicroStrategies, right? Mine Bitcoin or hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet, hold it as an asset because of its scarcity, because of its value, because of the options it will give them in the future. It's just giving them more control, taking that control away from the government. So there's the other edge, right? Any control you take away from the government, you have to figure out how to you're either going to have to fight them, right? Or you're going to have to figure out how to work with them. And the good news is up to this point, hasn't been, a crazy, bloody battle, right? It's been just kind of slowly moving our stuff away. But to be fair, a lot of this is their fault, right? If you're just printing money, issuing debt, not sticking to, I don't believe in Keynesian economics, right? But
Nope.
Even if you do believe in 2% inflation, we've been nowhere near 2% inflation for
Not even close.
decades. So that's kind of on them. If you're not, to quote a Bible verse, right? He was, what is the verse? He who is given much will be given more, and he who is, loses much will have the rest taken away, or whatever it is. It's like, you're not taking care of your stuff, it's going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So if you're not taking care of your people, if you're not taking care of the citizens of the US, we'll take care of ourselves. We'll figure it out. So
Do you think that there's going to come a point where they're going to be coming after, like if we take a look at the executive order 6260,
6102?
yeah, it's
Oh,
6261, where
yeah.
they seized the gold. Does this
Yep.
feel like it's like we're watching these ETFs now come and they're just piling all this Bitcoin in, right? They're just and
Yep.
then Coinbase is now, we've seen the SEC with, I don't know what your opinion on it is, but mine was that Sam Bankman-Fried was a CIA asset, and like he was just collateral damage. Things got too out of control and they couldn't, stem the bleeding. You don't get to be that powerful and get the connections that he has and the sit down meetings with Wall Street and the SEC without having direct ties to like the really, really powerful people. Like, right. Like he was planning to destroy Bitcoin. I think he wanted to get enough liquidity where he could keep selling your Bitcoin and collapse the price, whether that was to liquidate Sailor or what. I don't know what his end goal was there. But now we're kind of seeing the same thing with Brian and Coinbase, where all of this of this crypto is kind of migrating towards one exchange. And every time magically Bitcoin goes up to put a new all-time high and magically Coinbase breaks, markets kind of fade out and, Bitcoin price kind of just fizzles back down.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on the idea that this government is very willing and capable to, in a swipe of a pen, take your Bitcoin? Do you think that's coming?
I think that I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist. There are people that are smarter and do more research than me to like connect those dots, right? But I say the easy way to figure it out is just follow the money, right? So SBF had, his mom and dad both had connections. He might just be a Lee Harvey Oswald, he might just be a Patsy, someone else was definitely pulling the strings. Cause I mean, this guy's like playing video games on his, conference call for his multi-billion-dollar company.
Having poly orgies with his staff.
Yeah. I'm like, that guy is not, he's not Machiavelli, right? I don't think. That's just my gut, right? That's just my gut. But I mean, I don't know if it was timing or what, or I'm skeptical. It's like I never, very rarely do I fall for those kinds of things, right? It just doesn't look that good. But I don't know if you've read my some of my tweets and stuff, but yeah, the 61, I think 6102, if I'm saying the number right, is like, yeah, when they basically said, okay, you can no longer use gold as a medium of exchange. And it was to do, but all you got to do is follow the money, right? So they said that, and then they acquired as much gold, said, we'll give you US dollars in exchange for gold. And then they did that. And then the World War came on, and Europe was buying stuff from the US by literally shipping like tankers full of gold bars across the pond and giving us gold. And then they said, okay, we've got all this gold. We're going to keep it on behalf of on behalf of our allies. And we'll issue dollars and we'll send you, war machines and bullets and all that kind of stuff. And then, so we amassed this ridiculous amount of gold,
74% or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like 70% of all the gold that was known at the time in the world, right? And then we said, okay, and we're going to use the US dollar as a reserve currency. And then I think Tricky Dick Nixon was like, I think it was under his administration. He's like, okay, by the way, we're not pegged to gold anymore. Sorry. And by the time everybody was using the US dollar, right? And so it's just follow the money. They just controlled it. And then we used inflation and debt to destroy other countries, right? Like we would go in and say, hey, we'll give you money. Yeah, we'll give you $1 billion. And by the time this is said and done, in 5 years, you owe us 1.2 billion. And then they say, okay, well, where will we get the other money to pay you back? And they're like, oh, well, we're the only ones that have that money. So nowhere. Right. And so they default on the loan, and then the US goes and takes what they want. Right. So it's that over and over and over and over again. So all you have to do is follow money. Are they going to try that? Absolutely. It's coming. It's the only reason I say that. It's not a conspiracy. They did it once before. And it's funny when I hear people say, oh, no, they'll never do that. Oh, well, the good news about Bitcoin is because it's digital, because it exists, like I don't actually own any Bitcoin, right? I have keys that give me access to Bitcoin on the chain. That's what people don't understand. So it's like, and it's based on math and science, compute power, and energy usage. So there's no one government that could really do that. it's like what's his name, Antonopoulos, who's kind of backed away from Bitcoin. I would love him to come back and kind of come roaring onto the scene again. But some of he talks about what it would take for a government now to try to nuke the Bitcoin network. They would essentially spend billions of dollars, do all this covert stuff to try to get this, to try to do this, to fork the chain. And all they'll do is probably end up, achieving one double spend transaction on the Bitcoin network. And then it'll fork off and be its own type of Bitcoin. And as long as all the other people want to keep mining on the original Bitcoin chain, it does nothing. They've spent all that money to basically realize that if in the beginning they just went on the Bitcoin network and started mining Bitcoin, they'd have Bitcoin. Right. Yeah. So it's like this really unique, it's like there's a lot of good sayings in Bitcoin. It's like Bitcoin doesn't care about your feelings, right? It's true because it's based on mathematics and facts. This is not you can't Orwell 1984 this thing, right? It's like 2 + 2 is 4. You can say it's 5, but fuck you, right? Yes. It's 4. I can step off a cliff. I'm going to fall. I'm not going to fly, right? It's physics. So whether you believe it or not, right, that is the case. And so you can either play by the rules or you can kick rocks, go do something else. Those are your choices. And so can they make our lives super difficult? Yes, they can. I'm in a state in, Florida, and, there's a few other red states, right, for the most part, that are probably a little more, that are more conservative. And, we're Citadel states. Someone comes in, tries to take my property, we can shoot if they're breaking in, kind of thing. So it's like, there's a few places in the US that still remember what happened a couple hundred years ago. And we're willing to continue. Right. And the only way it works is by, continuing to speak up and use and vote with your dollar. Right. And I don't vote with my dollar anymore, right? I vote with Bitcoin. I'm like, they say get on $0, right? I'm not zero. I'm on 100%. I'm on Bitcoin. My money comes in almost immediately, unless I've got like immediate bills, it goes into Bitcoin. I save in Bitcoin. I'm mining Bitcoin, in a few different places and things like that. And if I need to, I literally just take 24 words, 12 or 24 words, depending on my seed phrase. And I go to another country, I find another I set up another Bitcoin wallet and I have access to all of my wealth. That's a pretty strong statement, to the US government that says, hey, you're going to have to work with us. Just work with us, figure this out. Otherwise, we'll be gone. So we'll see how that happens.
Do you think that this government, we were kind of having this conversation before the show, do you think that this government actually has any intention or want or desire to better anybody in this country?
I think there are still a few people, but I think absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I'm guilty of this, right? Like when I have in times in my life when I was like, making really good money or better money than, other times in my life, it's like you do stupid shit. You do stupid things. You get stuff you don't need. Yeah, you get stuff you don't need. You think that you can just, act a certain way or be a certain way or whatever. So you can only imagine people sitting right next to the money printer of the strongest currency, fiat currency in the world. And with a push of a button, they get whatever they want. They get more of it to send it to another country or do whatever, Yeah. I mean, that's hard. That's hard to keep your principles on that. I think eventually, but that's the cycle, right? That's the cycle. This world's never going to be perfect. So you'll have rise and you have a fall, and it happens over and over and over again. And so the more you look at history and money and civilizations, it doesn't surprise you anymore, right? And as technology is that much more great, especially now that we have a technology that ties money directly to energy, right, and time in a way that can't be screwed with. Then you're like, that's just going to accelerate. All of that is going to accelerate. They're going to try to keep up to maintain control. They're going to print like crazy, and we'll have another, we'll have mass inflation, like accelerated crazy hyperinflation. And, you'll wake up and last year your $100, whatever your $100 bought, you can only buy 20% of that this year. Like it's, to quote Parker Lewis, right? It's gradually, then all of a sudden. That's he's not the one that said that, but he named his book that. But yeah.
In Argentina, it was, I think Saylor is the one who says it, that Argentina, the citizens in that country woke up one morning to their bank accounts frozen. The next morning, the currency was devalued by 10x, right? So their dollar became 10 cents overnight. And then the next day, they put in government regulations which prevented you from converting your remaining pesos into US dollars. I think it was like $200 a week or $200 a month. It was just peanuts compared to I mean, you're trying to move a lot of your wealth out of something overnight. It's gone.
If you haven't met or talked to BJ, I'm saying it right, Dichter, I think is his name. He's up in Canada. Yeah. BJ, he was part of the Canadian truckers convoy up there in Canada, right? And that's exactly what happened to them. Like, people were literally transferring them money so they could buy groceries and stuff and water and stuff like that, because they were just literally on the highways and in the streets, right? Mm-hmm. And they shut them off. They just were like the nation of Canada just shut them off, right? Operation Choke Point here in the US, right? It's like, and that's still happening here. Sometimes if you have a crypto.com credit card or something like that, you can go swipe your card like at an international airport. And a lot of times it won't go through, right? So it's like they have control. They don't have to have a CBDC to control. Who told me this? I think Michelle Weekly told me this, but they don't have to have
next week.
Yeah, they don't have to have a CBDC to control your money. They already have control. They can shut down your bank. They can shut down your credit cards. They can do all of that right now, anytime they want to. Mm-hmm. And so it's like all they have to do is close the on and the off ramps, and they can do that. And it's like, so they can do that now, but they can't program the money to say, okay, well, you've bought too much beef and we need you to go vegetarian. So, you can't spend your money on this beef, right? Like that's eventually where we're leading to. Cause and you can see it because China's already doing it with a social credit score, right? So Bitcoin is a chance to fight that back, or gives you options to move. But that's unfortunately, that is something we have to expect and plan for. I hope it never happens, right? But it's something we have to expect and plan for. And odds are, 100% of all other civilizations that have happened before us have been through similar situations. So it's almost an absolute certainty that it is going to happen. Yes. The question is when.
And taking a look at the debt we have, and I actually want to throw something in there first. Like you said, the ability to leave a country during Nazi Germany, when the Jews were trying to flee Germany and take their wealth with them, right, so that they can barter their way through each country and try to make it to someplace safe. The women were actually taking their jewelry, the silver and gold, and they were melting it down and turning it into hangers. They were hanging their clothes on it, right, and then they were able to just take a few things with them. As the soldiers that were going through checkpoints and they were searching their clothing and searching all their bags and everything, they didn't catch that, the wealth was actually in the hangers. And that's how they were, a creative way that they were able to smuggle their wealth out of a nation. But probably, how many of them got caught and didn't get out with those hangers, or didn't get out with their gold and silver. And then your ability to start over when you have even just a little bit of wealth. I mean, you're talking about, $5,000 in a third world country could maybe keep a roof over your head, get you to a point where you could, maybe start a little side hustle or a little business or anything. But leaving this country with nothing, I mean, your odds of survival are just so slim, especially when you're going into dangerous territory. And the ability to move that wealth, you go into the Mexico and hit cartel land with a bag full of gold. Good luck making it out of Mexico, right? Like, you're going to end up in a ditch. You go there with Bitcoin and then the keys are in your head. Like you said, you can go anywhere in the world and nobody even knows you have any wealth on you. So what are your thoughts on the devaluation of our currency? We're watching our government print $1.2 trillion last week and increase the spending limit. And if you look at what was in that bill, It's almost like a circus. It's almost like this isn't reality. No logical market actor thinking this through would logically go, yes, I want to give, 1.1 million to podcasters. I want to give, 2.2 million to Elizabeth Warren and her Latinx businesses. I want to give, 490,000 to whatever doctor's office is going to give, transgender surgery on minors and mutilate these minors' genitals.
Yep.
Like, it seems like we're just on a freight train to hell. and we are just like pouring like just the coal. You can't shovel coal in that engine fast enough. Where does this end? Like how much longer? 25% of Americans own Bitcoin, which we've seen what happened with Bud Light overnight.
Is it 25%? Is that,
yes, it is now.
Is that the right number?
Yeah,
Wow.
I just interviewed somebody yesterday. Let me fact check that. I'll look it up. But let's just say it is 25%. We saw what happened with Bud Light. It took Kid Rock and a gun shooting a case of Bud Light, and instantly this entire country was like tranny fluid. We're not touching it. I won't drink it. I'll never. You couldn't. If you were on fire and somebody, I would piss on you before I'd use the Bud Light before I'd even piss on you to put that fire out.
Yeah.
We bankrupted a $40 billion company almost overnight.
Yeah.
How long do you think it is before enough people just go, fuck this? I'm out. I'm withdrawing from a corrupt economy. They're going to take the David and Ryan route and just 100% all into Bitcoin as much as we can outside of just, paying our bills.
I think, I think it's happening. Like it's happening. The ETFs kind of raised awareness, and people have, said to me, well, that's paper Bitcoin, right? They're buying a share in Bitcoin. And like you mentioned earlier, right, all of the coin is getting consolidated into one location that is unfortunately also, working very tightly under the supervision of the US government now, right? So it's moving, and it's there is some consolidation, but I think I guess the saving grace here is the fact that it is a global currency, right? Mm-hmm. So even if the US says, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to take this, right? Well, they have like 1% of the Bitcoin. Michael Saylor has 1% of the Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Other countries will have 1% of the Bitcoin, right? There will be a lot of countries, I think, long term that will have large percentages of the Bitcoin, right? But there will be plenty of individuals and companies and people that have access, that have the Bitcoin. We will get to a point where I think it'll be impossible for like the average individual to just go and say, I'm just going to buy one Bitcoin now, right? It's just not going to happen. At some point that will happen. I just think, and when I look at them and see them doing this, printing more money, spending it on all of these things that they want, pushing, this agenda that I feel is, I'm a bit of a libertarian, right? Like if you want to do that, okay, but you got to live with the consequences, right? If that's your lifestyle, that's fine. But if 90% of the people don't agree with your lifestyle, right, just be prepared, kind of thing. I feel that when I see those numbers, it's hard to fathom, but it doesn't surprise me anymore. I honestly, even though we talked about mining and infrastructure and the network and stuff like that and power and energy, I really don't know a lot about how Bitcoin itself actually works, right? I'm not a developer. I don't understand the code. I don't understand how all of that works, but I do understand how broken, the US dollar is. I do. Finding Bitcoin did not make me study Bitcoin. It actually made me study the US dollar and understand why it's so broken, right? So when they do these kinds of things and they're pushing, different kinds of evils and things like that, it doesn't surprise me anymore, right? The love of money is the root of all evil. These people are sitting right next to the printer. They feel like they're untouchable and nothing's going to happen. And, and they just look at all of the people in the US and say, let them eat cake. So it doesn't surprise me. It's literally just history repeating itself. The Romans did it. It's just going to spiral faster. The fall will be faster because the technology moves a little bit quicker. So I would like to say that, I'm surprised or it disgusts me or whatever, but unfortunately right now I'm just kind of numb to it. It just doesn't surprise me anymore. 2 years ago, 2022, something like that, we had like a school. I live in Round Rock, Texas, and there was a school board meeting because, they had allowed this book to be in middle school, high school, and even in elementary that portrayed, pornographic material, like, two guys going down on each other, right? In a book, in an elementary library, right? And it talked about how, it's like, oh, they felt this way or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, my boys are in private Christian school, right? And they're there for a reason. And I'm going to kill myself working to keep them there as long as I need to, right? Because people are not raising children. They're not raising boys and girls, right? They're raising men and women. So the sooner you can realize that and start treating your children like they're men or they're women, how to understand what's real, how to understand truth, how to understand how to defend themselves, protect themselves, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually, then that's super important, right? So it's like, I'm lucky enough to be able to do that. I'm voting with my dollar, right? If we can, in Texas, if we can get, what's it called? School choice passed, then, the money that would go to, the elementary down the street that's got, the teachers teaching whatever they want, pushing whatever agenda they want, all that money would go, funnel very quickly, especially in Texas, into the private Christian focused schools very, very quickly. So that's a kind of a rough note to be on here, right? But it's like, it doesn't surprise me anymore, right? The more you understand civilizations, the more you understand about people in society, the more you understand about, the more you read the Bible, right? You're just like, we're in a broken world, it's a break. So you just have to prepare for the break and do the best you can to prepare yourself and your family for it. So.
No, you're right. It's definitely be turned into this spiritual war. And my boss at LFA TV says it all the time. He goes, no nation has ever mocked God the way that we've mocked God and basically not lost their land. And that's what we're witnessing. We're watching this invasion. And I think sometimes that these people are so powerful with the directed energy weapons and the tools and the advanced technology that they have now, that in Project Bluebeam, where they have the ability to project these holograms in the sky, like I don't know if you've seen what they're doing over in Israel, but it looks like God's coming out of the sky. And I can only imagine, like, we know that it's Project Bluebeam, but to these people in these third world countries that have no idea, and they see this face in the sky talking to them and angels coming up out of the ground and like traveling into the sky. I mean, it's bizarre what they're able to project. And, they want a holy war, they want a religious war. I think they're going to get it. And it's just crazy. It's like these people have gotten so much power because we've given them control over the money. And I think that that's what it all boils down to at the end of the day is like, a lot of the big Bitcoiners, they talk about how Bitcoin incentivizes peace. It doesn't incentivize war. Where, like, let's just say you take Ukraine, for example. If the day they started talking about sending money to Ukraine, if Joe Biden was like, yeah, guess what, guys? We're taking your taxes up from 30% to 50% because we need to fund this war in Ukraine, it would have been a revolution in the streets the day that he even spoke about it. But because they can print money at will, devalue your currency, and steal your wealth through inflation, then... the civil unrest isn't quite there. But like I wanted to touch back on this one thing too. So I just Googled it, and it says, chief among the findings is that 1 in 4 Americans and 55% of investors surveys by Unchained, defined by Unchained as having at least one investment account, report owning Bitcoin. And 95% of this group says that they would buy or strongly consider buying more of it in 2024. So 25%. And I want to say the person I interviewed yesterday was saying that it was a 30,000 person survey. 25% own Bitcoin, and that 25, I mean, you just don't buy Bitcoin, I don't think, and not buy more of it, right? Like once you get your feet wet, it's like the hardest part is getting them to buy that first $100. And then after that, it's just like, the wheels just start turning in.
Yeah. Somebody tweeted the other day, it's like, find me a Bitcoiner who got into Bitcoin and then got out and will never go back.
I've never found one.
It doesn't happen. I mean, you hear people like yelling about it, getting upset about it, but it's because they traded it, right? If you just go in on Bitcoin and just sit and hodl it. You're like, you just watch it, right? Like you literally just watch it. And I got in by the grace of God at a good time. I got in like late 22 is when I first started kind of, figuring it out.
Good for you.
And so 22, yeah, like, I mean, well, good for me, right? But everybody's got to sweat, right? I got in.
What were you in at, like 40,000 or 50,000 there?
Oh, I was in at like between 24 and 18. And so 18,000. And so I did that, and I was like, I'm going all in under 20. I'm going all in under 20. And then it dropped to 15. And I thought, oh shit, I just lost 25% of my net worth. It's like, and then you just change your time preference, right? You change, have a low time preference or a high time preference. And then, and that's what I think is so interesting about when you free up your money and you take control back over your time and your energy, then it changes you as a person. Everything, you view everything else differently. So if you think about it, what really clicked for me, I was lucky. No one like orange pilled me. I just was working in the mining industry and like seeing all these amazing people and just learning little bits and pieces. And then like, they just all assumed I was a Bitcoiner already. Right. It was weird. Yep. And so I started studying it, and then I started looking at it. I was like, okay, so if I pay, 20%, roughly 20% in taxes every year, that's, about 60 days, 70 days of work of time that they take from me. So 2 months out of the year is just me paying taxes, right? A little over 2 months. And then I thought, well, if they inflate the money supply and my money buys less and less, and I don't go by CPI, that's all bullshit. I go by the actual money supply, right? And so I look at it that way because that's what affects how much I actually can and can't purchase. And so doing that, and I was like, okay, let's say conservatively, it ends up being 7 to 10% a year. That 10% is an additional 36 days a year that they're stealing from me. So I have 3.5, 4 months, a third of the year, right, that is taken from me every year. And then I thought about my family, my boys, how much time I get to spend with them, how much time I spend working, all of that kind of stuff. And you're like, holy shit, they're stealing my time and my energy. And Bitcoin is the opportunity to take my time and my energy and hold on to it, because it is tied to proof of work. These other, most of the other coins out there have no real functionality or application. They're just a different form of like fiat currency. And so most of them. And so I was like, this is really interesting. It's like literally you can measure the ideal way to measure for me to pay you or for you to pay me for a service is to say, like, if I ride in an Uber, I say, okay, it takes a gallon of gas to drive from here to here to deliver you to where you want to go. You owe me 1.2 gallons of gas, right? That's actually probably a more fair way to do it. And for the first time, joules per, joules per work, kilocalories, whatever you want to do. Energy is the actual measure of how to do work, right? Einstein figured it out. And so you're looking at that and you're thinking, I'm doing this work and they're stealing that work from me. And so for the first time ever, we have a technology, like a Bitcoin can be mined, or I say mined, right? It's created on a time chain every 10 minutes, so many Bitcoin. But you can look at that amount of hash rate on the network, and you can estimate joules per terahash on the network. You can literally do the math and say, these Bitcoin that were created at this timestamp in the 10 minutes previous to it probably took X amount of power, this much megawatts, this much gigawatts of power to create that one Bitcoin, right? And for someone to move a Bitcoin of value from one location to another, from one person to another person, right? That's profound. For the first time ever, we have money that's literally tied to something that no one can screw with, right? You either get on the program or you don't get to play. And so having that realization just changes you psychologically. I look at time differently. I look at relationships differently. I look at my finances differently. I look at debt differently.
Mhm.
Play the debt game, right? It doesn't matter. And I'm not going to ever sell my Bitcoin, right? I'm going to utilize it as a collateral now, and
Mhm.
I'll take out debt and stuff that I know is going to eventually be worthless, because if I take out $1 million in debt tomorrow, next year it's only going to be worth $900,000, and then
Mhm.
the next year it's only going to be worth 810,
Bingo.
and then the next year, so it goes down by that amount every year. So like that's why 30-year mortgages are great, because okay, my payment, if I bought a house, 20 years ago, my payment's $1,000,
Mhm.
right? But the house could be 3,000 square feet. What's that about? It's like playing that debt game, right? And opting out of the system. You step out of your system, turn around, and you see it objectively for the first time. And it's not just that, it's health, it's finances, it's uh, your family, it's relationships, it's your time, it's your energy, it's everything. And so that is what psychologically Bitcoin does to people. And that's also the phenomenon where we call it, uh, most of my last tweets for the day almost always is like, good night, all you crazy psychopaths, you know, love you all, right? It's like, you look at it and you're like, okay, Bitcoin goes up, Bitcoin goes down. And like, but it's not about the price. It's the new money. One
Mhm.
Bitcoin will always equal one Bitcoin, and there will never be more than 21 million of them. So
Yeah.
that gives you a sense of peace. I sleep better with all my money in Bitcoin than I ever did when I had, a few $100,000 in the bank, right, as cushion.
Mhm.
It just you just feel better knowing that, right, and knowing that I'm in control, and I have a deflationary money as opposed to a inflationary money.
It is such a bizarre, almost like the peace of mind you get, and like it's almost like spiritual in a way because you're just so much more at peace with the world and what's going on around their country, even though things are falling apart around us by the second. It does
Yeah.
give you that. What do you think is the biggest hurdle for people right now that have not got into Bitcoin and they're like, I'm not buying Bitcoin, the power is going to go out, or I'm buying gold and silver? And it's like, yeah, I understand that. It's because you're uneducated and you don't really understand the concept of, man has created something that's incorruptible for the first time in human history. It can
Yeah.
travel across space and time. It's saleable, as they call it. The
Mm-hmm.
most saleable good always wins. It always becomes the money in any market because it's just superior. It's the apex predator to every other commodity or currency that's ever been created by man. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think it is that prevents people right now? Do you think it's that everybody's just so broke right now, dealing with inflation and everything that's going on around the world, or they've just been indoctrinated? We grew up as slaves in this fiat slave world for so long that it's hard to break free of those shackles.
Yeah. So to use a meme, it's the Matrix, right? It's like you're
Mhm.
literally living in the Matrix by their rules. They're creating it. And to be fair, I don't think they, started out trying to create it, right? The people that first, at least in the U.S., right, there needed to be, there was a need for a transferable, physical currency, right?
Medium of exchange.
Yeah, but I can go back to the time. There's two questions you can ask people, right? When were you orange pilled? When did you, take the orange pill and leave the matrix? When did you figure that out? And the other one is, when's the first time you ignored Bitcoin? And for me, it was 2014.
Mhm.
I was running a business, had about maybe a dozen or so employees. We were doing pretty well, had a partner, and we hired this super sharp young kid to do like admin, IT stuff for it. He did everything, right?
Mhm.
Um, really smart guy. And we had 12 computers, and the rent at the place we were at, the electricity was included. And he said, well, we're not here for like, 16 hours. We should mine Bitcoin. And I was like, well, what's Bitcoin? So he starts telling me about it. And I can't remember what the price was at the time. I don't know.
In
But
14, it would have been around anywhere between like $50 and $250, give or take.
right, something like that. And so I said, I was like, oh, okay. It's like, well, tell me about it. So he sat there for 45 minutes. I asked questions. He was already, I don't think he was like in it, but he knew what it was.
Mhm.
And I sat there for a second. My partner goes, "What do you think?" And I looked at them both and I said, "That is the dumbest, stupidest thing I've ever heard. It is magic internet money. It's never going to work. It's never going to say, why would I exchange my valuable dollars for this worthless thing? That's ridiculous." Right. And then took me 12 years, like eight years or so to get there to where it's like, okay, I understand it. Right. And so, that is the reason, right? It's just, you just look at it and it's like in disbelief. You just have to, and it's also one of those things where you have to do your own research. You have to be willing to look, you have to be willing to listen to people. And a lot of people are just not, right. They're just worried about their 9-to-5 job, or they're working at a good company. They've done pretty well. They've managed to stave off the inflation for a long time. So they feel like they've got everything under control, and that's fine. We all have everything under control until we don't. And so the more you learn, again, right, I don't know a lot about Bitcoin. I know a lot about the dollar. And the minute you learn how the central bank was set up, how the Fed was set up, you read The Creature from Jekyll Island, you listen to Michael Saylor and Breedlove talk for, 35 hours about energy and Bitcoin. And you start to put in that time. I got to a point where it's like, I didn't want to do anything literally except for study Bitcoin for like 8 hours in a day. I would listen to 3 or 4 podcasts. I'd go for a walk or I'd go to the gym. It's like, what music do you listen to when you're working out? I'm like, Breedlove and Saylor. It's like it just anybody.
I was at the
anybody
gym today listening to it. Literally.
I think I literally today there's a what was it? What Bitcoin Did with Peter McCormack. I listened to, I think it was Mark Moss, if I'm saying that right. Anyway,
Mark
it's
Moss, awesome.
talking about debt and management and playing the fiat game, with your Bitcoin and stuff like that. It's like, you get obsessed with it. And that's why you look so weird to everybody else, because they're like, why are you so into this? Why is it so, and it's because it affects you in a profound way once you realize the dollar I'm dependent on controls like 99% of my life. And when I opt out of it, I get all of that control back. I get all of it back. And you're right. It's kind of like spiritual in the fact that it's like when you find Jesus, right? And you get baptized and you decide you're going to live your life for Christ or whatever. There's a certain kind of peace that surpasses understanding, right? And that's a spiritual, that's your soul. But there's a certain physical peace that comes with knowing you are not part of a broken physical system anymore. And that is what, and it puts you in touch with your time and your energy in a way that nothing else does. It's the matrix, man. And you got to be unplugged. And sometimes the difference here is you can't, in that movie, right, they unplug him, right? And that's what we call orange pilling. But in reality, no one's ever actually orange pilled by someone else. They actually orange pill themselves. They just take the time and listen and take the communication from someone that they trust and they know enough to say, okay, maybe I should look into this. And then ultimately it has to be your decision, right? No one just goes, oh yeah, I'm all in Bitcoin, let's go. After a 30-minute conversation with somebody super smart, right? Ultimately we all have to kind of orange pill ourselves. And if you're not focused on it and everything's good and you're complacent and you're happy and you're comfortable, there's no need.
You're right on that. Eric V. Stacks, I interviewed this gentleman earlier this week.
I love Eric.
And he said,
I love Eric.
He just is spitting straight fire, man. It's every word that comes out of that guy's mouth, I'm just like, my jaw's in awe. I'm like, yeah, man, I wish everybody was on that level. He said that, your first phase of getting orange pilled is skeptical. And he goes, and that should be, right? Because if you're the person that speaks to somebody for 30 minutes, like you said, and just goes out and buys Bitcoin, that means you don't understand Bitcoin. And when the next person comes up to you and goes, hey, this Ethereum coin or this Solana coin, right? You're going to go, okay, cool, right? You jump right into it. So the true Bitcoiners are the ones that are skeptical, and that's good, right? Even if it costs you more money. And I interviewed Gary Cardone. I don't know if you've seen him. He's came out of nowhere now and is all in on this Bitcoin thing. And what really opened my eyes was when he goes, you want to know how much of a Bitcoin adoption is taking place in America right now versus other countries? And I go, how much? He goes, about 12%. And he goes, so you want to know what I would say to Elizabeth Warren? And he gives her the double barrel middle finger on my show. Basically, Elizabeth Warren can suck it, because what America does with Bitcoin doesn't matter anymore. This is a global asset. I can take all of my wealth that you said and choose to move out of America and move that wealth to another nation. And then all of a sudden, now my business is in that nation. Everything's operating in that country. And they're going to reap the rewards and the benefits from my energy and my knowledge and everything that my business brings to the table. So it's like, the more you choose to ignore Bitcoin, the only person that suffers is yourself, right? Like you said, you ignored it in the beginning. I did the same thing as well, right? And the only person you did a disservice to was yourself and your family. And the longer that people that are watching this that are not buying Bitcoin, you're going to have that same thought. You'll be looking at this as maybe your first time ever watching a show on Bitcoin, and you're going to go, you will be able to look back. If today's the first day you buy Bitcoin, you'll be able to look back at that moment in your life and pinpoint that moment where your entire life changed for the better. And it's even harder. Like, it's harder to look back in your life and go, yeah, that exact. And sometimes when bad shit happens, it's easy. You're like, yeah, I got a car accident, broke my neck, got a DUI, right? Easy to look back and go, that's when shit got bad for me. It's hard to really pinpoint a moment in life when it changed. And it's even harder to know it when it's happening, right? And I guarantee you that this is one, like when you start adopting Bitcoin, like you can feel it. You're like this is something, like my life's changing. And then you sit there, you're watching these, you're stacking these sats, and your just life just gets better and better and better.
I think, I got to have lunch with Gary. There's a group of us, but I sat right across from him, and that guy understands power and energy better than, pretty much anyone else that I've ever met and talked to. So he gets it, no question. And then, but it's interesting. It's like Bitcoin is not the end all be all, it's going to save you, right? What it is it's a catalyst. It gives you a focus and a direction and something to study, right? Like, so I realized when I was, building that, that raised grow bed, right? Way back to the beginning of our talk, right? It's like,
hey, wait, what is a raised grow bed too?
So you take water from a source and it's like raised up. So you pump the water up into this source and it flows in. And I built a flood and drain system, right? So it was gravel. So it would like flood up, fill it up, hit its bell siphon, and then a vacuum would drain it super quick. So it was constantly water with all my koi fish poop in it, right? Feeding the plants, and then immediately oxygenate all the roots. It's like, it's what the Nile River does every year, right? They made the land so fertile at the time, right? So, but yeah, no worries. But it's like, I just and I didn't know what I was doing at the time. And like you said, when you're in it and you're making that life change, it's like, I was just in a rut. Like, I was trying to do the same things in my life, go on the same interviews, work for the same companies that I had always done, but I didn't realize my life up to that point, I was working in a broken system. So I just kept repeating the same mistakes. This was just go learn something new. Just go do something new. Whatever it is, it doesn't even matter what it is or, what it costs you. Just go learn something, because you've done nothing, right? That was the change for me, right? And so Bitcoin, to a lot of people that are from all walks of life, whether you're a developer, finance, traditional finance, TradFi, whatever you want to, whatever you energy, whatever you want to say, you start to see this, and it gives you a new perspective, something new to learn, right? And it's so, it's really interesting. I read a book by Bo Lozoff called Deep and Simple, and Bo, believe it or not, I found him through reading Mr. Rogers' biography, right? Like, he was a huge fan of Bo's, and Bo rehabilitated, lifelong criminals and repeat offenders and things like that. And he was not Christian, but like spiritual. He didn't put any one religion on these people, but he said the most life-changing things, the decisions you make, concepts, are all deep and simple. Shallow and complicated is what, sells gym memberships and supplements and workout, plans and, statins and, and vaccines and all this kind of stuff. Right? It's all complicated, but very, very shallow. Right. The deep and simple stuff, it's like, okay, it's a really simple concept, Okay, we got, a form of money that's trustless. No one party controls it, but everybody has to agree to it. Okay. And then it doesn't hit you for a while. And then you start to think about the implications of that. You're like, well, so wait, when I send you money, I don't have to go through my bank and then a clearinghouse and then your bank and then this. And then if there's a problem anywhere, I got to go back and forth until I fix this, or whatever. I don't have to do this. And then, okay, well, inflation, it's very deep. The idea is very, very simple. The idea is I want to give you control of your money. I want to allow you to transact with someone right there in front of you or on the other side of the planet without any other third party.
Mm-hmm.
You don't realize the implications of that until later, right? So the best ideas, the best decisions you ever make in your life are deep and simple. Deep and simple. And so it's like the decision for me to go into Bitcoin was a very simple decision. Like just one day I woke up and I was like, I feel comfortable with this. Mm-hmm. Move it all, like all of it. Zero out the bank accounts, move it all. Okay. And, but it was a very, the ramifications of that are very deep as far and wide stretching as far as, different aspects of my life. They say Bitcoin has tentacles, right? It's an octopus. So you can go down whichever tentacle you want and be a part of it, but you're still connected. You're still connected in the middle, which is what also I think brings these people together, these people that may have been on the fringe, looking for, we have broken family. Fiat creates a lot of, brokenness, broken families, 100%. Relationships, broken jobs, broken careers, broken, feelings, all of that, and these people who are broken, right, find an opportunity, something that, it's not quite like, God and Jesus, right? But it gives them a way to say, oh, this is a sure thing. This mm-hmm. is built on math, science, and I like math and science, and I can trust it. I can verify it, and make sure that it is actually what it says it is. And so it gives them a very unique perspective and a direction that they desperately, desperately need. And you'll find, I think it's interesting, when you start looking for truth like that, you also find you look for truth in all aspects of your life. So most people get healthier. They start to eat better. They want to control over where their food comes from. They take control of their finances. They get out of bad relationships. They avoid bad relationships. And a lot of them, I think, are also finding, Christianity as well. So it's, mm-hmm. I've seen that. It's a very interesting trend when you're actually looking for truth, you find it, kind of thing. And Bitcoin is a catalyst to help you look for that.
Dave, I think that's a great way to wrap it up. I want to be very respectful of your time. I know I booked you for an hour and we're well over that hour. So I just greatly appreciate you coming on here, man. If you could stick around for 2 seconds, I just got one more question I'd like to ask you after I'm going to do the outro really quick. And then if you could stick around for just 1 second, I got a question I want to ask you about these mining farms, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell everybody one more time, where can everybody find you? I know I got links down below in the description. Tell us about your, a couple of your businesses, where the websites are. I got your Twitter up here on the screen. It's also down below. What is the best way to contact mm-hmm. you? Give us your best shout out and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. So Vea.energy is the website of my latest company. I'm Chief Technology Officer for that, and for off-grid gas mining, and also some renewable energy, like waste to energy kind of projects as well. And then at David BRANSCUM, it's Rebel Mining in Texas, and I'm also on Telegram at Immersion Excursion. So those are probably, yeah. And
you guys, you should update the link in your Twitter bio. It says hydropod.io, but when I click it's a dead link. So
that's like, so you can still email me at that. It's david@hydropod.io. It's just an email link for like, I still do some, immersion and hydro cooling consulting on the side and things like that. So you can reach out to me that way too.
Oh, awesome. Cool, man. Well, we greatly appreciate you coming on the show, man, and look forward to having you back. And, anytime that you want to come back on, you got my calendar link. Now you don't even have to ask. Just, you feel like coming and just ranting about some Bitcoin or some mining or regulations or talking some shit about some politicians, man, you're welcome on the show anytime.
Anytime you want me to get angry, I'm happy to. Righteous anger, baby.
God bless you, my friend. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, man. All right,
guys. We'll touch you guys later.
Run.